everybody, welcome back to my channel. It's Jasmine. Today is the very first episode of 31 Days of Halloween, and for today I thought that the best way for me to start off this whole series to talk to you all about my haunted house in Hemet, California. Now before I jump in, let me just say that I truly believe that all of Hemet is haunted. Every last part of Hemet. I feel like just the whole city in general is haunted. But still, you know, I'm going to just talk to you about my house specifically. Now, I'm not going to tell you the address or the actual street, but if you're from Hemet, California, all the things that I'm about to talk about happened about 2 to 3 blocks away from Hemet Elementary and Acacia Middle School. So, when we first started looking to buy houses, I was young. This was in 1997, so I had to have been around 9. And I remember we were looking at different houses, and my parents took me and my sister along, and we pull up to what is now my house, and my dad immediately says, "We'll take it." And my mom was like, "Why don't you go look at it?" And so he goes into the backyard, and he comes back up to the front door and he says, "We'll take it." And my mom said, "Don't you want to look at the inside?" And he's like, "No, I like the property. We're going to take it." And my mom convinced him to go inside of the house and to start looking at, you know, the different bedrooms, the layout and all of that. And he said, "Yes, I will take it." So they went ahead, put in an offer. We were able to get the house, and we began packing up, and we moved in I want to say that it was April of 1997. So the first night that we got the keys, my dad stayed at the other house in San Jacinto, and it was me, my mom, and my sister, and we all slept in the new house because we were so excited to finally have something to call ours. We were renting our whole lives, and my mom was ecstatic to be a homeowner, so we went ahead and spent the night, and it was me, my mom, and my sister in the living room. And we only had a rotary phone. And if you don't know what a rotary phone is, it's an old school phone that has the turn dial on it. And we fall asleep with the phone next to us, and the phone rings, and we pick up the phone and nobody's there. So we hang up and we go back to sleep. And after we had fallen asleep, I don't know about how long we were asleep for, so we fall back asleep and we hear this giant boom. And my mom thought somebody was breaking in because they thought that the house was still like unoccupied. And so I run over to the rotary phone and I dial 911, and I told my mom, I'm like, "Let me know when we need to hit 1. But we couldn't figure out what the noise was, and we just hung up and went back to sleep. For me personally, I've always been afraid of the laundry room. I don't know why I've been afraid of the laundry room, but it's just a weird space. As soon as I walked into it, even when we were looking in the house, I just remember I wanted to run out of there. And I also don't like the hallway very much. So, I've always been a little on edge there. Also, a lot of the other weird things that would happen in the house were, if you were in the kitchen, you felt like you were being watched, or you would feel like you were being watched, and then you would get out of the kitchen because you just had, like, you know, your hair standing on end. And so you would leave the kitchen, you would come back, and like cabinet doors would be open, and you're like, what the hell? So then a few years later, my mom was very, very, very sick. I'm going to do a whole video on my mom, and she wasn't just sick with the normal disease, she was sick with something else, and I really want to make a video on that. But anyways, at this point, she was nearing the end of her life, and it was my birthday. Now, I'm in middle school at this point, and my dad and my sister had taken my mom down to San Diego to one of her doctor's appointments at the specialty facility. And I remember coming home from school, and so I go ahead and I'm going into the bathroom because I had to poop. I remember I had to poop. And so I'm in the bathroom and I have the door closed, and I hear, and I'm like, "Oh, you guys are home early, hold on." And then I hear a knock again, and I'm like, "Hold on." I was like, "I'll be out in a minute." And then I heard another knock, and I was like, "Hold on, I'm going to the bathroom. I'll be out in a minute and I'll help get mom out of the car." And I go out and I'm like, "Okay, I'm coming right now. Hold on, let me put on my shoes," because my mom was, at this point, she was a complete vegetable. So she had the whole wheelchair that laid down and everything like that. And I go into the living room and I open the door and no one's home. And I just remember going, okay. And I sat on my front porch until my sister and my dad got home probably 3 hours later. I just sat out there because I was so scared. And it just didn't feel right. So at this point, my mom dies. My mom passed away on January 17th, 2003. At this point, my sister has spiraled into a depression. Me and her are both in high school. She is, at this point, you know, doing a lot of drugs. My dad is doing a lot of drugs. And the energy in the house was just creepy. Between all of the creepy stuff that was already happening, plus the negative energy of them. What is up with this piece of hair? Plus the negative energy of them being on drugs and just the weirdness, and I was the only sober person. The house was just creepy and it was just wrong and I did not like it. So my dad at this point is getting really, really weird, and all he does, oh my God. And my dad at this point is getting really, really weird. All he does is sit in a dark living room with the curtains closed, in the corner, and he just stares and he drinks and he does drugs, and that's all he does. And it was scary, and I feel like he created a topa. And if you don't know what a topa is, long story short, if you manifest energy long enough, you can create something, whether that be good or bad. It's almost like the whole law of attraction thing, if you want to look into that. So my dad, I think, created a topa, and weird things kept happening. In fact, I'm hearing a bunch of weird noises in my kitchen right now, and it's kind of freaking me out. What is that? It's because I'm talking about it. Every time I talk about it, stuff like this happens. This is going to be a long month of filming. So at this point, my dad is telling me, your mom is here. I can feel her and I can see her. I felt like whatever was in that house was not my mom. My mom wouldn't scare me the way that things were happening, and he would go to work a lot. And so I would be home alone because I had lost my job at that point, I think. And I had graduated, I had lost my job. And I just remember thinking, like, this house is not okay. And things were just getting progressively worse and worse, and you just constantly felt like you were in fear. Like, I felt like I was being watched while I was showering. I felt like I was being watched while I was in my room. There was nowhere that was comfortable, and he kept saying, I feel your mom here. Don't you feel your mom here? And I was like, no, I don't think that's mom. And he got angry, and he was like, it is your mother. And I was like, but it's I don't feel like it's my mom. I was like, if it was my mom, she wouldn't make me feel this way. I would feel loved. And to this day, he still thinks that it was my mom, and I don't. At this point, I had my boyfriend who would come over, and my dad kind of let him spend the night. He didn't really let him, but I'm like, if you can do drugs and you can do all this weird stuff, I can have a boy spend the night. Sorry. And I was kind of rebellious at that point. And I must say that everybody who ever came into that house was instantly tired. No matter who you were, if you came over to visit, everybody ended up falling asleep at my house. It was the weirdest thing. And to this day, even when I go to visit my dad now, I get tired. And I remember my ex, he would constantly sleep. And I was getting annoyed. I'm like, you don't come over here to sleep. I was like, I wanted to spend time with you. I haven't seen you all week. I haven't seen you in 2 weeks sometimes. Like, why are you taking a nap in the middle of the day? Why don't we, like, go do something? Why don't we talk? Why don't we do anything? And he's like, I literally can't keep my eyes open. I'm so sorry. I don't know why I'm so tired. And one night, I was up late, and he was in my room asleep. And he had to have been asleep for about an hour or two. And he comes out, and he's like, what just happened? And I said, I have no idea what you're talking about. I had a cat named Zeus. And Zeus was an indoor-outdoor cat. And it was really hot, and I remember it was the summertime. And so I had both of my bedroom windows open. I'm going to go ahead and do a tour of my dad's house the next time that I go down there on Saturday, and I'll be able to show you a little bit better. And that'll probably be the part 2 of this video. And I may actually try and do some ghost hunting as well. I'm not quite sure yet. It depends on how much my dad is comfortable. So anyways, if you think about it, my room is almost a perfect square. So I have a window here that leads to the street. And then I have a window on this wall over here that leads to the side of my house. Now, he told me that he was woken up for no reason, and that there was this large black orb that flew into my house from the street side. My cat came bolting in after to catch it, and that black orb immediately went out my other window, and my cat jumped out that window. Now, the weird thing about that is, if he were chasing a bat or a bird, how would they know exactly where the exit was? They immediately came in and out, and it flew right over his head, and he said that it was cold. My room was always so cold. It was the most bizarre thing. All the other part of the house would be warm, but my room was freezing. And I mean, mind you, at this point when I'm talking about this, it was winter time. So, and we had single pane windows, and it's an older home. It was built in the 50s. So there's a reason that it was cold, but if you walked into the rest of the house, it was normal. But if you walked into my room, you could actually see your breath. And when it would get that cold, it would happen instantly. It would be cold in my room, and I remember me and my boyfriend at the time would be sitting underneath the covers, and we were talking, and I just remember I started seeing my breath, and I was like, it's so cold in here, I can see my breath. And he goes, no, you can't. And I said, go and see if you can see it. And he's like, I can see my breath. And it was the weirdest thing, and we just felt uncomfortable. There was another time I was up probably at 2 or 3 in the morning, and my cat was laying on my bed, and immediately he perks up, and I look at him, and then I hear, it was the weirdest thing. This didn't scare me, but I don't know what it was. I'll show you when I get to my dad's house, the door. But right where my door was, in the middle of the air, it sounded like little voices. And I want to say it almost sounded like what a fairy would sound like. I don't know why I think it's a fairy, but I think it's a fairy. And it went, and then it was like a little giggle. And my cat looked up, and he was just staring at it. And then I heard like a weird noise, and it almost sounded like a mix between like a growl but a boom. It was weird, but it wasn't loud. And he hissed, and then it just stopped. And I could not sleep that night. I think I stayed up until it was light outside, and I went to sleep because I was like, what in the hell was in my room? I should also, I guess now is a good time to tell you that when we heard that boom the very first night, that happens every single night. It doesn't matter what night, it happens. Around 3 o'clock in the morning, you hear a giant boom in the hallway, to the point where we just started sleeping through it. Only people who spent the night would ask what it was. Also, there was this weird instance around the same time that I thought my dad was making the topa, and the whole laundry room, which I think is one of the scariest places in the house. I remember I went in there and I was trying to move stuff around, and I had my ex with me, and he said, don't open that. And he got very defensive, and he actually grabbed my hand, and he had never put his hands on me before, and he grabbed my hand and he said, stop looking in the cabinets. And I said, I need to look for it. He's like, I know, but something is telling me don't look. Something doesn't want you looking in the cabinets. Something wants you to leave it alone. And I left it alone, and I just never went through the cabinets. And a couple weeks later, I had walked into the laundry room to go outside, and overnight there were flies. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of freaking flies, and they were everywhere, and they were all over the windows, and they were just buzzing everywhere. And as soon as you walked in there, they just flew to you, and they would land on you. And I was so scared. I almost peed. I was so afraid of whatever was going on with those flies. It was the weirdest situation. And so finally I had decided that I was going to go around the back, and I was going to open up the back door with a key and let the flies out. And so I had opened the back door so they could get out of there and escape, because for some strange reason I was afraid to kill them with bug spray. And I opened the door, and then I ran. And a couple hours later, I walked into the laundry room, and those flies had not moved. They didn't move at all. And I was like, what the hell? They didn't want to leave. And I told my dad, I'm like, yo, there's like a bunch of flies in the laundry room, and they won't leave. And he's like, yeah, I noticed that. Just leave the door open and they'll leave. And I went back out there, and the flies hadn't left yet. And I was like, what the hell is going on? And so I told my dad, I'm like, hey, the flies are still there. We need to kill them because they're freaking me out. And then he went in out there and the flies were gone. And I don't know if they just picked up within a 10-minute period. The flies were just gone. Now at this point, I had left my boyfriend and I had just met my now husband. And my now husband comes to visit me, and he started doing the same thing that my ex would do. He would sit there and he would just start falling asleep on my couch. And I'm like, what is up with these dudes coming to my house and falling asleep, damn it? I don't get to see them for a couple weeks at a time, and you're gonna knock out? Like, I was so irritated. Looking back, I'm wondering, was something sucking their energy out? I don't know. So, at that point, my dad had also met his now wife. So it kind of all happened pretty fast. I ended up moving up here with my husband, and then his wife moved in with him in Hemet. And she now is having experiences in the house. Every night at 3 o'clock, she hears the boom. My little sister, who has just turned 10, one time she woke up in the middle of the night and she said that there was something and it was hovering above her in bed. I guess my other stepson, dad's wife's children, spent the night one time, and she said that when she was laying in bed, it sounded like something was underneath her on the floor, like dragging their claws across the floor, but it was underneath the house. She said the best way to describe it is if a porcupine was walking underneath there and the quills were just dragging behind him. It just sounded like they just never stopped. And I remember I would hear scratching in the walls too. Mind you, I think we had rats. So I'm gonna get into the reason I think that the house is haunted. Now, first of all, I must say that the house was built and lived in only by one other family, and they were an older couple. Now to get into the theories. I'm gonna tell you that when we had first moved in and we were looking at the house, I remember feeling like there was a bed in the living room. And I had no idea why I felt like there was a bed in the living room. And then I found out later that through a neighbor of ours that the elderly man that used to live there actually died in the living room in that bed with his wife taking care of him. And they were a very sweet couple. They were big into church. And I don't feel like they were the ones necessarily that are haunting the house. What I think is going on is that house was in beautiful condition when we moved in. But because my parents did a lot of drugs, me and my sister weren't really watched, and we destroyed that house. To this day, my dad is still in the process of trying to fix up the house now that he's sober. But we destroyed that house. Our house was filthy. It was absolutely disgusting. There were roaches. Who is here? Oh, it's the sign. There were roaches everywhere. There's large piles of trash. It smelled. There were rats. I mean, we lived in a hoarder's house. And part of me wonders if the reason is because the old couple that lived there and took great care of the property was so upset because these white trash people moved in and destroyed their beautiful home. And I understand, especially being a homeowner now, I get it. If I, found out that somebody had bought this house and then they destroyed it, I would be so upset. I put a lot of love into this house and a lot of work, and I'm still working on it. And so I wonder sometimes if that's what it was. Sometimes I wonder if it was just the land. The land is bad. The land is haunted. I think the Topa had something to do with it as well. Or what my thought with my dad manifesting stuff and all of the negative energy. I don't know if that has something to do with it. It's the weirdest thing. So for the part 2 of this video, I'm going to go ahead and give you guys a tour of the house. And I am going to hopefully find a nice quiet room in there and talk to you guys and see if I can get any EVPs. If I can get any... I'm going to use a ghost app and see if I can pick up anything. I'm going to see if I catch anything on film. And hopefully I find something and I can go ahead and post it and give you guys a part 2. Thank you so much for watching. Go ahead and give this video a like. Subscribe for more spooky stories because I have 31 days of Halloween. Go ahead and share this if you're interested. I'll talk to you guys later. Thank you. Bye.